In this part of the audit, the auditor is auditing the internal laboratory, which has recently been added to the organization's scope of activities. Watch this video to determine if the auditor is using effective auditing techniques.
Okay, so we didn't have an internal laboratory before, from what I can understand. So can you just talk me through what we have in here now?
Lovely. So before we were very heavily reliant on external labs, and that was causing us a few problems with regards to sending things overseas. It was very expensive. The time restraints that we had to actually meet slots for those external labs was causing a lot of problems. So what we have done, and an improvement we have made, is actually bringing some of the equipment in-house. So we will do some in-house testing now, which meant that we have our own internal lab that we are now making use of actually here.
That's great. Okay, and because it wasn't in the scope before, you never had the requirement for an internal laboratory scope. Do you have an internal laboratory scope now?
Yes, so we've set some scope up for our system. So this is what we have put down on a matrix of all the new equipment that we have, all the tests that we do with those equipment. So for example, this machine here does a cyclic temperature, and you can overlay it with humidity as well. So this tells us the range of, for example, temperatures that we could test to. And then depending on our PVP development, we use these machines as well to help us develop our PVP.
Okay. And how are we calibrating the equipment? Is that done in-house or externally?
So this is done externally. So we will have a calibration house that is UCAS accredited to come into our facility here, and they will come and calibrate it here.
Right, okay. So I'm just going to take down the serial number of this particular piece of equipment, and we're going to follow that through into the calibration process.
Yes, we've got a register that we have all of our machines on, and the dates that the calibration is due and who they are calibrated with.
Okay, that's lovely. Right, we'll go on to calibration then.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's summarize. In the planning for any audit, it is important that the auditor understands any changes that have happened since the previous audit. In this example, due to the risk of delays using external laboratories, the organization decided to develop their own internal laboratory capability. The auditor correctly followed the trail to verify a lab scope had been developed. The minimum content of a lab scope is defined in IATF 16949. Internal laboratory 7.1.5.3.1, which states, an organization's internal laboratory facility shall have a defined laboratory scope that includes its capability to perform the required inspection, test, or calibration services. The laboratory scope shall be included in the quality management system documentation. The minimum content of the lab scope is defined in the definitions, which state the lab scope must be a controlled document containing specific tests, evaluations, and calibrations that a laboratory is qualified to perform. A list of the equipment that laboratory uses to perform the above, and a list of methods and standards to which the laboratory performs the above. Reviewing the lab scope then gives the information to be able to follow audit trails, which could include the competency of the people working in the lab, the standards used, or the equipment used. From here, the auditor was going to follow audit trails to verify the calibration of the equipment within the internal laboratory. The auditee stated this was done by an external IATF 16949 accredited laboratory who comes on site to do the calibration. The auditor should follow an audit trail to verify the external laboratory is accredited and verify they are doing this calibration within their defined laboratory scope, which should include the ability to do on-site calibration. This links to IATF requirement 7.1.5.3.2, external laboratory, which states, external commercial independent laboratory facilities used for inspection, test, or calibration services by the organization shall have a defined laboratory scope that includes the capability to perform the required inspections, tests, or calibrations. So let's summarize the key learning points. As part of audit planning, auditors should identify any changes in the organization processes to help focus on the areas of the greatest potential risk. For internal laboratories, an organization must have a clearly defined laboratory scope, meeting the requirements in the IATF 16949 lab scope definition. For external laboratories, auditors should verify that if an accredited laboratory is used, that the calibration is done within the external laboratory's accreditation scope. For example, checking, does this include on-site calibration?